Come on, man. Look, we all grew up. We've seen Star Trek. Every kid.
Here we go.
Hold on. Hey. Every single
now we're gonna
kid.
have some fun.
Every single kid just wished, as they watched Star Trek, that they could be in the Borg.
So resistance is futile.
Yes.
I'm kidding. Nobody wanted to be the Borg. The Borg was the nightmare.
That's right. So I'm a big Star Trek fan. I own it. People make fun of me. Whatever. They already do that. So I'm a big Next Generation fan. I think Jean-Luc Picard is the ultimate stoic in leadership. I have a whole shtick on this. We can explore it if you want. But Jean-Luc Picard was all about duty and responsibility, and he never told a lie. And he was all about the broader mission. So Gene Roddenberry was the creator of the idea of Star Trek, who always was trying to say that we need like the ideal is a post-commercial society. You didn't own anything, there was no currency, and basically
in the Federation.
Right, in the Federation, right? Well, on the particular mission, right? So the idea of the Starship Enterprise, actually Earth, let me even correct that. On Earth, in the Star Trek narrative, they had gotten rid of private property, they have gotten rid of commerce.
I don't think that's true.
Okay, you could correct me.
I think the issue is the writers wanted to create that ideal of a future with no property, but that broke the motive function of humanity. And so what ends up happening is you see depictions of beachfront properties. And you see in Deep Space Nine, for instance, Latinum was heavily traded. I understand Deep Space Nine was working with different civilizations, were coming and going. But even in the Next Generation, Federation credits are used to exchange between the Federation and other civilizations. So currency existed within the Federation.
Sure,
they had some kind of
that could be right. The point I'm making, though, is Roddenberry created this idea that you can have what you want when you want it, right? Food will appear as you want it. You can go in the holodeck. But I think he actually makes the best point for flawed human nature, which is against the anti-commercial thought of Rousseau, which is that we do bad things because of our society, because we always want things, and that's what gives us our greed. And if that actually was true, there'd be no drama in Star Trek. Right. Instead, they still have romantic relationships. They still lie. They still cheat. They still steal. The point I'm getting at, which is a contrarian point, is that in Gene Roddenberry, to try to create this idea of a futuristic utopia, he actually says, even if we get rid of all the needs, wants, and interests of the individual, you're still going to have tension and drama amongst fellow human beings, or human beings and other species.
I love too the left likes to say Star Trek is communism.
Well,
It's not. It's literally not. It's an idealized post.
Yeah, it's techno-communism.
It's not. It's idealized post-scarcity classical liberalism. There are people in charge. There's military hierarchy.
Hierarchy.
Yeah, huge hierarchy. There's Admiral Picard in the new Picard series. There are choices people can make, places they can go. It's not that everything is necessarily free. It may be because different writers wrote different things and different episodes have different elements, but very much so, it is not communist. There are things of value. There are artifacts.
Yes.
Picard owns a winery.
But it's not total post-scarcity because they run the Enterprise off of what, dilithium crystals?
Dilithium.
But can they 3D print dilithium in their
No, they
machines?
can't.
So that's...
Right. It's post-scarcity in terms of basic human needs, but very much
That's
so.
right.
There are rarities. Picard's an archaeologist. There are rare artifacts that he wants. He's gifted an artifact in one episode, and he's like, I can't believe this is given to me. Wow, you can't get these. You can't make them. It's like an old artifact from an ancient civilization. Very much so, scarcity and rarities and value exists.
So reduce scarcity.
Food scarcity and shelter.
For human sustenance, right? All of that scarcity disappeared in that. There was no longer a factor.
The writers, in order to make the show function, cross continuity with the other episode, other series, money needed to exist.
Because it was post-scarcity.
Latinum.
Food and shelter was post-scarcity, but only if you had dilithium. Because if you didn't have the energy...
Earth was fine.
But
like
Earth must have been running also off of dilithium, I would imagine.
Dilithium crystals are for the warp core reactors. For general purpose, they had renewable energy
they're
systems.
Retaining energy from the vacuum.
And you make a really good point, though, is that the three words that is most repeated by Picard would make him closer to Marcus Aurelius than to, an egalitarian leader, which is make it so.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the most clear way that you can command anyone. Not like, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Instead, is make it so.
The idea of whenever you talk to a communist and they say that's not real communism, right? What is real communism? They say it is everyone living equally in full ownership, blah blah blah, all that stuff.
Egalitarianism.
Yeah, but when you bring up dictatorship, they say that's the deviation. Communism isn't supposed to have the people who control everything and are the wealthy elites. Picard has his own ready room on the bridge. Mm-hmm. What gives him this luxury?
I think it was Nicholas Gomez de Villa that said every equal society is divided into two parts.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's always got to be somebody making everybody else equal.
Yeah, and there was a great episode where Q, he's this omnipotent entity.
Not that Q.
I don't think so.
No, this is
just so how everyone knows, Q is like a divine figure in Star Trek.
He's part of the continuum of ascended entities.
Wow, so it's not is it the 17th letter?
I think it's the same.
Yes,
Q.
yes, but anyway.
No. What if there was a connection?
Picard gets the Q. It's him causing all our problems. Picard gets the opportunity to go back and save his heart because he said, if I was just not brash in my youth, I never would have lost my heart getting stabbed in a bar fight. He's a mechanical heart. And so he goes back, changes history. And then when he returns to the present, he's a lowly science officer, a low ranking officer of some sort. And when he goes and he talks to Riker, he says, do I have what it takes to be leadership? Riker says, you've always been scared to take the risk necessary to do what needed to be done. So honestly, no, I don't think you'll ever make it. And then Picard goes, enough, Q, send me back. I get it. The point was you had to earn something. You were told if you didn't work hard enough and do what you had to do, you wouldn't earn it and you weren't good enough. And that's what Michael Malice says is the big question that I think is Malice says this. What determines whether someone is on the right or the left? Have you ever heard him ask this?
No.
Let me ask you the question. Do you think that some people are better than others?
Of course. Well, do I think they're better at things than others, or do
no.
they have more inherent worth than others?
I just said, do you think some people are better than others? Plain and simple.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to interpret this. But yes, generally, I think there's a hierarchy of...
It's a broad question. It can mean a lot of things. Michael mentioned that on the left, the leftists will say, no, of course not. And or they'll hem and haw and say, well, I mean, but people on the new right will just be like, yeah, of course.
The only asterisk I would put is that one human being at birth does not have an inherent value over another.
Right. But if you were to say, are some people better than others? There's a bunch of reasons why the answer is yes. Some people are better at basketball than others.
Of course. Yeah,
some people are better at math than others.
Yeah, but they could be worse at something as well.
Exactly.
So like,
absolutely.
Are they better?
Yes.
Yes. And are they worse? Yes.
Also, yeah.
It's like an incomplete question.
So the point is, it's not an incomplete question. It's just a broad question. I didn't say in every respect. I didn't say, are some people better than others in every single circumstance?
If you're better at basketball than another person, but worse at math, then is there like a total of worseness? So you're not better, even though you are at some.
You're better than them. You don't need to add qualifiers to the statement that if I say, are some people better than others, we're not getting specific. The fact of the matter is everyone is better than everyone else for some reason or other reason. The point is, yes, quite simply. Charlie's better taking notes than I am. I don't even take notes. He's great at it.
Thank you. Well, and this goes back to the idea, what he's really getting at is, do you think there's a hierarchy of existence? And we as conservatives do. We think some things are more beautiful than others, objectively more beautiful. We think that some things are more desirable and better for society. They think that it's all just kind of a subjective exploration. Who's to say that that's better than that?
You're making me think of the Borg. Like, is the Borg, in the history of Star Trek, there was a war, right? World War III happened, and then this great Federation came out of that after?
Sort of. I mean, long after. There's a lot that happened. There was a big war. There was a period where authoritarian governments ruled by drugging their police officers into being high all the time. There's a lot to go through.
Okay, that happened in Nazi Germany.
And, so what happens is Zefram Cochrane?
Yes, he invented the warp drive.
And it was like a fairly low
power,
low class operation, basically. Mm-hmm. And then the Vulcans took notice and then said, oh, we better talk to these, fellas.
So we could talk about the Vulcans for a while.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Do humans evolve at some point into or build an AI that then becomes the Borg?
That's very historicist of you to believe that human beings are always on a pathway to the Ubermensch. Eventually, we will become the Superman.
Well,
I reject such
you have not
German
seen Picard.
philosophy.
You have not seen
I
Picard.
haven't seen Picard.
So, spoilers for those that haven't seen Picard.
So is this on like a Paramount login or some
Yes,
crazy thing?
it is.
See, I reject the premise.
So I didn't want to watch it because I was really worried. I was like, I know what they're going to do. And it actually was pretty good. And it's very different from The Next Generation, but it's basically fan service for the fans of TNG where everybody makes an appearance. Not everybody, but Brent Spiner's in it. And you're like, how does he do that? He actually plays Data. And I was surprised because he's old and Data is an android. But anyway, I digress. Spoiler alerts for everybody who watched or who hasn't watched. So in the show, in Nemesis, which is one of the, I think was Nemesis the last movie? The last Star Trek?
I never saw Nemesis.
The last TNG movie, I think, was Nemesis. Data sacrifices himself to save Picard. The storyline of Picard is that someone was able to take the positronic neurons from, I think, what was the stupid Data called? There was Lore, and then there was B or whatever. I can't remember the name.
You're testing my Star Trek trivia.
So they start making new, much, much better synthetic beings. And that's basically the premise that, yes, a superior humanoid with synthetics that eats, drinks, and lives but can calculate like Data is created, and it's a threat to human to biological existence.
And that's the Borg?
No.
Oh.
It's just a superior synthetic. It is like a human.
It's the
with
Ubermensch.
superpowers.
Yeah,
Right.
It's the Superman.
Like in Star Trek, Data can calculate, and they'll be like, "What's 57 trillion times 47.369?" And he's like, "The answer to that is." So these new synthetics are super strong, super fast, can do all the calculations.
Are they carbon based? Can they give birth?
I don't think so, but they easily self-replicate. That's the kind of the point, I guess.
Self-replication.
And so there's a group of Romulans that are like, this new life form is a threat to the existence of us, the old life forms. And the Borg are different. The Borg are biological that incorporate mechanical parts into their structure, and then eventually connected their brains on what I would consider to be like an advanced form of Twitter, where all their thoughts are heard in rapid succession, and then it forms a unifying collective mind.
So are we evolved? Is this what's happening? Is humans are splitting?
So this is an interesting question, which is that some would say yes. I mean, if you play out Darwin and Hegel, they would believe that human evolution is ever progressing. That if you look at the historicist view of the world, which is replicated in this narrative that you talked about, they think that human nature will get better, and that eventually we will reach that ultimate level of the Superman. I reject that premise, obviously, categorically.
It's just wrong.
I think nature is the norm.
I think that we are such minuscule, tiny pieces of this universe that the idea of humans would ascend to some,
without resistance, you like a tree without wind will fall over and die. And you need resistance to grow. So I would imagine as we evolve and become stronger, we're going to seek new resistance to continue to grow.
Evolution is not linear. What pressure is being exerted upon humans to make them smarter, stronger, faster?
Gravity.
Nothing.
Gravity.
In fact, evolutionary pressure right now is making humans stupider.
It's devolution.
And weaker.
Yeah.
It's not even necessarily devolution. It's just evolution. Mike Judge said it best. Those who procreate the most are being rewarded by nature.
But because some people are building critical thinking skills, it seems like. Some people are learning empathy and gaining psychic power, for all I know.
To understand evolution, you need to ask who are procreating the most and why, and then you can make predictions about what's going to happen in the next several generations. There is nothing to suggest that we are being forced to be smarter, stronger, and faster. What evolutionary pressure would result in that? Like if a bunch of aliens came and started hunting and killing humans, the fastest, smartest, and strongest humans would survive the extinction event, have a bunch of babies, and the babies would be much stronger. That would be an evolutionary event. That's not happening right now. We're gorging. Well, I mean, actually, maybe it is. A lot of dumb people gorging on fast food and trash and not exercising and decaying in their, in their homes and their lounge chairs, or believing that because the earth is melting, they're not going to have kids at all. So the one thing Mike Judge missed is that something we absolutely do see is that conservatives have more kids than liberals. And today, liberals are even less likely to have kids. So one thing I've brought up in the past, Pew Research shows that Gen Z is slightly more conservative than millennials, but only by a tiny, tiny amount and only in some areas, meaning they're very much like millennials, slightly more conservative. A lot of people on the right seem to think that means the right is winning the culture war. You're not winning the culture war, you're winning the breeding war. In the early 2000s, a report was done, several reports, showing that liberals on average were having about 1.7 kids, and conservatives were having 2.02 kids, which meant in 20 years, or in 18 years from that study, there would be a bunch of voting people and slightly more conservative than liberal. If that trend continues, the future absolutely will be religious conservative. Maybe not Christian, maybe it'll be Muslim, but
Oh, that's assuming that conservative parents will have conservative children. But as we were talking about with Ben Stewart, technology kind of hijacks and leaps evolution. So like a child of a conservative can go on the internet and have their evolution shifted and become a new, have
It's not
new.
even just the internet; it's also our public schools. And we go back to the CRT discussion. Just because we win this battle on CRT doesn't mean we aren't sending our children to the schools run by people who thought CRT was a wonderful idea.
So that is, I don't think necessarily changes the equation. Because some conservative children can be indoctrinated and turned to the left, then they're still less likely to have kids after the fact. So it will effectively have a pull factor on conservative children, but the end result is always going to be slightly more conservatives existing because they're having more kids.
So you think it's the state of mind that is resulting in less children? I understand that.
Well, I mean, the AOC, I think it was, she said, I'm scared to have a kid because of climate change.
Yeah.
There was an article that came out recently saying having a child is the most destructive thing you can do.
Jeez.
Conservatives are like, I don't care about that. I'm going to have kids.
And
And they do.
should have lots of kids.
yes.
Yeah.
It's a moral good.
Yes.
And one of my favorite stories in terms of the scientific debates is always about the great horse manure crisis of New York. Are you familiar with this?
No.
Before the invention of the automobile, there was a great fear that as New York expanded and horses were used to move goods in and out, the city streets would be just covered in horse crap everywhere because, well, more city means more horses. What would they do about it? They never had an answer. They never needed one. The automobile was invented and the horse was phased out and it didn't occur. So what we need to make sure of, I'm scared of the left for one reason. I love Star Trek. I'd love to have a Star Trek future. The left are Luddites. They may claim to not be, but their worldview is inherently that we will never improve technology. And we must stop what we're doing right now to preserve existence as it is, or revert to some lesser state, like more attuned with, I don't want to say attuned with nature because it's you will own nothing and you will be happy, right? They're very much like climate change means we don't have these things. But my worldview is very optimistic in terms of our ability to tap into technologies that have always found ways to help save humanity and adapt. And I don't believe we've reached the apex of technology. The famous patent officer or whatever his name was back in the 1899, he was like, everything that can be invented has been invented. He said that because he was getting such stupid patents. He was like, this is insane. You can't invent anything. And then some dude walks out and goes, yo, charged electromagnetic spectrum. Boom. What happens if we, in the next 5 years, break through Eureka, some dude at CERN runs out and throws the papers in the air and discovers anti-gravity. Then all of a sudden we're colonizing every single planet we can find.
I mean, think about the fact that they discovered electricity. I don't know how long it was between electricity and the atomic bomb, but it really was not that long a period of time.
Bro. The discovery of the invention of flight and going to the moon was a few decades.
Yeah.
You're more
Crazy.
optimistic than I am. I think the left is divided in two categories. The type of leftist you're describing is not the leftist in charge. The person in charge right now is embracing technological innovation and giving more and more power to a smaller group of scientists that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's interesting you mentioned the Luddites. This is a hard argument to make, but there's a lot more nuance to the Luddites than actually people realize. They had their livelihood being destroyed,
Yes.
and they were very worried about technological innovation. We use that as a pejorative, and that's probably right. But to be honest, I could see myself smashing my phone in the next 5 years. I think that these little smooth screens are doing awful things for humanity. So when I went on my honeymoon really quick with my wife in the Caribbean, the most beautiful sunsets you could imagine. To my right was a whole family looking down at their screens at the moment of the sunset. To my left was a family looking at their screens. I thought to myself, there's something deeply unhealthy about this. And so you could be right. We might be entering into this wonderful phase of where technology will improve our life. My fear, to just disagree a little bit, is that I think technology is currently contrling us. And
Yeah,
I don't see that going to change.
How extreme were the Luddites? Did they say no irrigation?
That's a good question. I mean, again, I actually read a book about that many years ago. Tim might actually know it better than me. I wouldn't know.
Because the technology controlling is irrigation is a technology, but without it,
It's a methodology, not a technology.
well, it's also a form of tech.
It's a methodology.
An axe is a piece of technology. It's a technology.
It is, but that's a physical object
hoe,
used to
you
manipulate.
can't irrigate without. It's like the evolution of technology. What you do with technology is also technology.
Sure.
So you need to build tools, which are technology, to carve dirt, which is a technology.
I mean, you can patent methods, right? So.
Yeah.
I think the danger
Semantics.
of this new type of technology that we're coming into is I don't think we quite can understand what it does to the human being.
We mentioned it with Ben Stewart. It is a bunch of humans who don't realize they're creating some powerful new kind of entity, and we're mindlessly building it. We're teaching it the reCAPTCHA stuff. That's all just programming it to see and think. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to see the full show, come back to this channel, youtube.com/TimcastIRL, Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., where you can leave comments and super chat, and we actually will read your comments on the show. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and if you want exclusive members-only content, segments you can't get anywhere else, go to timcast.com, become a member, and we even have full bonus episodes. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.